Buenos días. Buenos días para todos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We're going to be talking about the GeneXus platform in relation to development and beyond development. What do I mean by this? Well, Gaston was saying some minutes ago that one of the big pillars, one of the strengths of GeneXus is that it allows us to create and make our business applications evolve. This means that we don't only need to develop, but we need to make those applications work. We need for those applications to continue working, functioning, and evolving as time goes by in a more and more complex world. Right from GeneXus beginnings, we focused on that. We have many tools, many products, many services, processes, and so on and so forth related to this matter. However, something that happened was that as we were creating these different products, what we could see is that if I have to go into a GeneXus server to see an activity of how the sources are versioned, I've got a URL, I log in, and I see what it has to do with a GeneXus server. If I want to go to Marketplace because I have to download a pattern or whatever, I've got another web page with another interface, with another login, and so on. And that was the case for every single thing I wanted to enter. What we are focusing on with GeneXus platform is that in the same way we have an integrated development environment, and in the same way in that integrated environment you needn't use different channels if you're going to generate Java or .NET or if you're going to use chatbot or AI. In the same IDE you're going to start integrating things. That's what we want to achieve in relation to the rest of the activities in the development cycle and the operations of an app. That is to have a unified environment where you can integrate and coordinate all these activities. This is already giving you a more abstract vision. When you are at the IDE, you are editing a certain database, a certain base knowledge, forming part of the information of a certain products. Here in the platform, we are seeing the project, a project of a certain system that may have more than one knowledge base. It will also have a knowledge base of repositories, servers, etc. So this is where we can start saying, well, this is a top-down vision to create a project. This project is going to use such and such a technology. The repository is going to be called in this way. It's going to develop this component. These are the participants of this project. They have certain roles and certain authorizations. Now, below this level, I'm sorry, he corrects himself. Why is this important for us? Because of the integration, precisely. There is an integration of at least 3 different dimensions. The first one is the basis of the various activities. So we have a unified channel where I can integrate development activities or version or build or test or monitor and so on and so forth. Apart from that, I also have an integration at the level of resources. This is the same place where I can see all my projects and all my KB and all the user controls that I use, all the applications I've generated, which are the database, which are the machines, and so on. And also, it's a mechanism of integration at people level. Insofar as I encompass all the activities of the full cycle, I'm also including lots of people with different roles and profiles. They can all interact in this unified platform. Now, how can we do this? Below this, we have a whole interoperability architecture. We have specifications, APIs, protocols, etc. Now, as it happens in any house, if I want to tell you what the house is going to be like, and I'll show you the plans and the technical specifications. It's easier if I see a maquette. Then we're going to see some sort of maquette to see how this GeneXus platform is going to look like. So the first thing you're going to see is something like this. It's a web page. This is similar as with GeneXus server. We've got a server that is exposed through a web page, and this is going to be the same. We're going to have a web page where the unified vision of all the products and services is going to be. Like GeneXus server, where you can have access to, as a service, we do the hosting, but you can hire GeneXus server through that web page, or you can install it as a product on premises in your own company and do it in the same way. So this is the same idea. This is a web page that's going to be offered as a service or as a product. Now, what you are seeing here is the initial road. That is, someone who has just entered, hasn't started, hasn't got projects, and the first thing that is offered to that person is to create a project. Now, this is similar as to when the IDB, you have to create a KB and you use certain templates, you choose them. In the same way as with IDE, you are offered a template or SQL or others with .NET in there could be any other templates that are more specific, not only with the technology, but it could be a template of an invoicing app, or a certain template using certain components, or to create a KB that's going to be working with AI. There could also be our own templates that we provide as GeneXus that you can configure and save in the platform, or they could be provided by third parties. Insofar as projects are created, you'll have a unified vision of all the projects in my account and linked to my organization. I can work with them. So I have a high-level vision of the projects, and I also have a higher-level vision of the activities that encompass more than one project. And here you have something that is continuous integration. That is everything that we have a continuous integration process in relation to other things. There could be things about testing, monitoring, apps, etc. Now, when we go into one specific project, then again we have a unified vision of all the activities and all the components that involve that app. For instance, we have the activities, the versions, the commits, who had a commit, what changes, how many, and so on. But there are also things dealing with documents, with documentation, and we could even see the various working copies. This is the vision of the repository, but we could also have details about the various KBs linked to this repository and what is the state, the publications made on the basis of those KB, the process linked to this project, and so on and so forth. Therefore, that's it. That's what it looks like. But I was saying that there are also various components dealing with these different activities. And there are 3 dots at the end, because these are the basic, the initial ones. But all these things continue with things that you may add in the future. Let's take this road of each one of these activities and see what we've got in each one of them. Necessarily, we have to develop. That's the first thing. Everything starts with developing. We are making software development projects. In the vision of the project here at the top right-hand side, there's a button that says Edit and the name of the project with a little arrow. That would be an access. So that once I get to that, I enter that project, I'm going to edit and open a certain KB of work copy, and that is related to this project in my account. That could be a link, grabbing it by the IDE, and in my computer, I will start with that working copy in my computer. Or that's another leg. There is a possibility of editing my project with GeneXus M, we have advanced a lot. There are lots of talks here, particularly one by Germán Asís about GeneXus M. Now, GeneXus M is a light customer for edition. The one part is on the side of the customer, on the other hand, is on the side of the server that is working on this GeneXus that we were using. It's a light version. It can be used for Linux, for iOS, and so on. So requirements for the IDE is easy. The head is at the server, so you can go through using a Mac, edit in the KB, you close it and you go to another machine in Windows and you edit the same KB. So the KB is centralized. The build is centralized also on the platform, and the configuration is centralized in the platform. So from the standpoint of the organization, this is a great advantage. You can set up the entire architecture, the configuration of the support for GeneXus, and on the customer side, what they have to do, the only thing, is to use a light customer. As Gaston said, this is a customer based on web technologies. It runs on Windows, on Linux, on Mac. Perhaps tomorrow it will run directly on a browser anywhere. So this is how we start with our development, with IDE or with GeneXus M, but the platform is providing a service to that end. Once we develop, we share and version our development, and so we go to the SCM leg. This is where we have GeneXus server. This is the biggest player in all this. It's like an evolution of GeneXus server to GeneXus platform. It's not only covering the SCM part, but the part of all these other services. In fact, many or practically all these activities are connected or related to something in relation to GeneXus server. For instance, I may want that once I've made certain changes in a KB, I make the commit to this SCM, and on that basis, a process is triggered that makes a build and tests and deployed, etc., etc. So that's an important, very important leg for the platform. Then I said we have to make the build. All right. Build, on the one hand, is the one that you make in the IDE or GeneXus M, but now we're talking about an automated build. We could have automated processes and parametric processes of the build process in a certain KB. And here we have two large branches. One has to do with the interoperability, and we focused on trying to allow other things, our GeneXus things, operate with standard tools of continuous integrated service. We've worked with Jenkins, where there's a special key, and so that we can work on GeneXus service or integrated process. There are many talks in this meeting about the experience in using it that have been successful. So that's the interoperability dimension. But the other one, which is far more important, is the integration one. GeneXus platform is focusing on integrating all these services as one further component of the platform. In the same dashboard you had saying, I'm going to create a KB or a working copy, then you can say, I'd like to add an integration process of this KB, and I would like to set up a version with these parameters every night, and that it can be checked every hour, and that can be input somewhere else. And all that is no longer integrated in Jenkins and configuring things integrated GeneXus. On the other way, it's the other way around. With the GeneXus platform, we have the continuous operation services integrated there. It could be connected to Jenkins or to any other in the future. We don't know, but it could be available in a unified way in the platform. As we develop and build, we are also generating things, and we like to share them. This is something we've always focused on, that is the possibility of sharing web components, user controls, patterns, etc. More recently, above all, sharing modules. The traditional way of sharing objects or apps or components that were generated was through the file system. Let me zip these files and send them to you. Now the industry is moving to another paradigm, which is similar to what we do with a code. We publish in a certain place, in a repository, the various assets, the various resources available, and thus we have an integration mechanism for those things. We call that knowledge matrix. It's basically a repository of assets based on standard technologies like Maven or Sonatype Nexus. Now, how can we see this specifically, this question of user controls and so on? Well, if we look at modules, for instance, in GeneXus, we have the possibility for you to integrate different modules in your KB. In each one of your machines, you have a local repository of components that can be linked to other KBs that you're working with. And there could also be a possibility of an organization to define its own repository for its organization, publishing certain modules, and certain versions of those modules are published that can be linked at that level in the various heads. For a KB, you can integrate it as a module. You can integrate a component coming from another KB. You integrate it, you set it up, and you test it to see how it works. Now, as regards testing, well, that's our next leg. There is a survey dating back to 2017 of many software development teams, and it said that something like 63% found that test was good. That was precisely the bottleneck of all processes. There we've worked a lot following our call to automate everything that can be automated. And so we try to automate testing. In this integration line, we try to integrate all these things in our knowledge base. What you see there is a unit test. That's a GeneXus procedure. It is written in the same way GeneXus code is written, and you make calls to different objects, and you check, and you have mechanisms to see whether certain results occurred. In that case, it's running a data provider. It's trying out this data and see if the conditions are right. Along the same line, or in line with automating tests, so that we don't have to write manually all that, we can make a basic initial automated writing, and I have the full power of a GeneXus procedure to do whatever I want and personalize it as I like it. And the same way we have unit tests, we have user interface tests, and as Armin said, we have user interface web objects and also SD. And here again, we have the automation of the execution, and also the initial creation is automated. You can do it manually, you can execute it manually, but I have a recorder there that recreates the initial case. As it's there, that's one further GeneXus procedure. Once it's executed in the video, you know, someone was recording this and seeing, there you can see it in the video. The automated execution, what it does, it is to go through each one of those sentences, and it checks certain conditions and saves the results. Once this is over, you have a result panel, what things fail, what things didn't, more details. So you can do this directly from the IDE, but particularly you can automate it as a further process in a continuous integration cycle. So you can make, you can develop it, you can do the build, and now we can make the test. Something that is also important and that has to do with our tests, whether they are manual or automated, has to do with core coverage. I would like to know the measure. I would like to know that the code that is modeled in GeneXus and whether that code passed a test. Gustavo Brown worked a lot on that, particularly in engineering, to have an execution mode that registers this coverage. So once I've executed a certain process, I can know in detail on which objects it went through. So you can see how many times it went through, how long it take it, in each one of the objects what the coverage was. For instance, there it shows that it was 100%, and I can see a detail at the code level of each one of those objects. Each line tells me how many times, how long, and what lines it went through. You can do this directly through the IDE, but we are also working so that the next step is that through the test you can do it through the whole coverage and have statistics of the test. All this is automated, conditions to check, and you can check that you went through a certain percentage and so on and so forth. Now, when all this runs well, if the tests do well, then we want to put it into practice, and that's a deploy. Deploy and test are brothers that are self-referenced. Sometimes to test, you have to make a certain special deploy with certain parameters, to a certain place in a certain way. So I've got a deploy to be able to test, and I also have deploys after testing, after passing certain conditions. I would say I make another deploy to another testing stage or directly to production. We've worked a lot on that as well. We have multi-platform automation. We have process that can package and define what I want to do with deploys, deploy unit, and I can define the type of deploy I want to make, and to package an OPC or Y, and then afterwards I can install it in a server, or I can say I'd like to do it to deploy to Bluemix or Azure, etc. Now, the important thing here is that, once again, going back to the platform, is that it's not only to have the question of the automation of the deploys, but also to have them integrated to the cycles of a certain project. And in this unified vision related to the project, we'll always be able to manage the deploy processes. We'll have the activities of the deploy process and monitoring and so on and so forth. As I said, we put in some of the legs or some of the stages, classic stages of a process of debugs, but there are many things to be added. Static tests, diagnosis, monitoring, filtering, support systems, etc. That's the core of this GeneXus platform, to be precisely the unified channel, which is going to allow us mainly to make it more visible and to try and use things, again, with an analogy with the IDE. If we want to start using certain functionalities with IDE, you have to go to a certain menu and a certain window. But more than everything, we have the full cycle management of development, build, test, etc. We have the project vision. It's not only loose KBs, but we have them all, those that are correspond to the project, to the components it uses, the publications made, processes, and the unification of the various roles that must participate in all this. We are working with multidisciplinary services more and more. Roles are more and more different, so we need integration tools for that work. And that's the way we are seeing to be able to create business applications, to make them work, and make them evolve along the time, along the future-proof line of GeneXus, having to do with development and beyond. Thank you.